Hey, Sandy.
Hey, Jacob.
How you doing?
Good.
How are things in Kanekistan?
Well, I think they're okay. Work was a little crazy. Yeah. Summer's coming. It gets more crazy.
Did you go to church today? Oh no, you got to work.
Uh, well, technically, I didn't start until 12:30, but no, I didn't. That was bad.
Have you tried that church that David was suggesting?
No, it's like 45 minutes from me down in Surftown. If I go somewhere else besides where I'm going, it'll be here, somewhere closer.
Sally Joe.
Ah,
Yeah, it's not dark out yet. So, what do you want to chat about?
so you were hanging out over in Father Eric's live stream
Yeah,
discussion?
Emma was covering for him, so I decided to join and then
Yeah.
paper while
Moral support. That was nice.
listening.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
It's Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo. It is.
Do you guys celebrate up in Kanekistan?
No, I did wish somebody, a friend I'm going to see next weekend, happy birthday. Which, yeah,
Apparently, Cinco de Mayo is not really very popular in Mexico either. It's kind of like a American holiday, which is funny.
yeah, I don't get it. I don't even really know what it's about.
I mean, it's supposedly a Mexican holiday, but they don't celebrate it in Mexico.
Interesting. Oh, yeah, here the big deal. Well, somewhat of a big deal here in the town where I live. The big deal is the Scottish festival that will happen in August. Because Fergus is a Scottish name.
Your family's Scottish, right?
Half of them. Yeah, my dad's side. My mom's side's English. Very different. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for the Scots. They're very good people. Not that English aren't, but they're different.
As Vervaeke says, any two things are alike and different in an infinite number of ways.
Yeah, so I'm taking his course, The he well, one of several that he's running at the moment. Tons of philosophy and Middle Eastern thought. That's interesting. I'm reading heavier things that I'm used to reading. And I'm discovering where all the unexpected language that hangs out around this little corner came.
Say that again?
Oh, the language. When I first encountered this little corner and I couldn't understand half of what people were saying, I'm like, oh, now I know why. Everybody had just probably spent 3 years learning the lingo, and
Yeah, he uses a lot of neologisms that I'm not sure are necessary, but
he thinks interesting. Seems to me that he works on thinking by not thinking if he can. You know, that finding that place beyond thought, every place beyond whatever. So, but he's interesting.
Here's interesting.
What are you eating tonight? You on peanuts again?
No. So there's a Japanese market that's right next door to where I do my internship.
Yep.
And I went there and bought a snack. It's called Ikari Mami, apparently. And it's lima beans,
Mm-hmm.
but deep fried.
Well,
Kind of like potato chips, but made out of lima beans.
now there's something parents didn't think of when they were trying to get kids to eat them.
I always liked lima beans.
Do you? They're not terrible.
Rabbi Mullet, what are you doing online if you didn't do your class? Like, how could you, Rabbi Mullet? Apparently, they don't celebrate the 4th of July in Britain. They should.
They don't celebrate the 4th of July in Britain.
Hello, Rabbi Mullet. What happened to your Jonah class?
Well, we took a Pesach break, and I'm getting an echo over there. So we took a Pesach break, and I wanted to get back into it, but I just couldn't settle back in quite yet. So we're gonna restart, God willing, next week.
Okay.
I will try to join, but it's Mother's Day.
Oh, it's Mother's Day next week, so maybe we'll push it off. Because we also have a mother in this home, so we're gonna have to take care of her.
Mother's Day? That's not a Jewish holiday.
It's not a Jewish holiday, but mothers feel unappreciated if you don't do something. So you gotta. Shalom bayis is a Jewish value.
Bechukosam, Rabbi, bechukosam. I'm joking.
I hear you. Every day is Mother's Day.
Every day is Mother's Day. When I used to be makpid not to eat turkey on Thanksgiving. Back when I used to have all kinds of chumras.
Yeah, I'm saying that's an approach. I think we used to be, and we went back and forth on. I grew up with Thanksgiving, and then I went to yeshiva, and it was like Thanksgiving is non-Jewish. So then the truth is, we lived in Israel, so there was no Thanksgiving in Israel. It's an American holiday. So, but what was ironic, I don't know if you recall this, Jacob, but in Or Sameach, they serve turkey on Thanksgiving.
I did not know that. So I think, okay, so I have to say, I read the Igros Moshe. It seems to me, if the government wants to make a day where they say everyone should give thanks to God, right? That seems like a completely legitimate thing for the government to do. And so I was always rather, positive on Thanksgiving, but the specifically eating turkey, just it was Elijah is joining us. It just smacked too much of bechukosam to me.
Too ritualistic.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So Ramosha says, as long as it's not a chok, which means it's not a law, there's really no problem doing it. It's just kind of like you want to call it a custom, and already that word already sounds dangerous, but it's not. No one's mandating on us that we have to do it. So we could choose to do it, we could choose not to do it. Rav Moshe is a little almost self-contradictory in his responsum, and his responsum is confusing. So, you have others on both sides of the issue. Um, and so we didn't do it in Israel. We came back to the United States, and we just kind of like ignored it. And then um I don't know. I mean, Rav Soloveitchik, I think from what I heard, held it was a very positive thing to do. Maybe, you know, um, and so I think a few years ago, maybe it was during COVID. I think during COVID, when my mother was going to be all alone for Thanksgiving, let's say normally she had my sister, but during COVID, we decided we were going to do a virtual Zoom Thanksgiving dinner with my mother so she wouldn't be alone. And like, I never lived near my mother since I've been married, almost never, because I got married. We lived 7 years in Israel. My mother's in New York. She should live and be well. We moved back to New York for only 3 years. And then we went to Seattle for 8 years, and I'm in Houston now 3 years. So, during COVID, I was like, oh, my mother's going to be all alone for Thanksgiving. That's really depressing. I think it would be honoring my mother if we do a Zoom Thanksgiving dinner. So we made Thanksgiving dinner that year just so that we could do with my mother. And we made it earlier in the day because she's 3 hours ahead in New York and we were on the West Coast. So we did that. And then last year, I think, we decided to do it. We had cousins who moved to Houston. So we're like, oh, we finally have family in the neighborhood, which we hadn't had all the years. Let's do something together. So my wife cooked up a storm for Thanksgiving, which was so delicious. It was like the best food ever that I was just like, we got to do this every year. So, in other words, to make a long story short, yes, there are those who say it's a non-Jewish ritual with religious overtones. It's meant to mimic the Thanksgiving offering, and the original pilgrims offered it to Yashka, their lord, and we cannot mimic these things. And the other view is, no, it's a generic holiday of thanks, and thanks is very basic to Judaism, gratitude. And even Rabbi Avigdor Miller, who was against Thanksgiving being celebrated by Jews, at least, with a turkey and all that stuff, because of ritualistic mimicry of pagans, he said he was very much an advocate of celebrating the 4th of July, which was American Independence Day, because he felt that was really the day to show gratitude for the creation of a country that allows religious freedom, that allows Jews to live the best lives they lived anywhere on earth throughout history, and we should fly an American flag and all that stuff. He was very patriotic in that way. And July 4th does not have religious overtones like Thanksgiving, he felt, did.
Religious overtones.
What's that?
Is there really religious overtones to Thanksgiving in the States?
Oh, so he said yes. In other words, maybe today not. But he said if you look into the history of the foundation of the holiday of Thanksgiving, it was meant as a Thanksgiving offering akin to the one that was done in the book of Leviticus, in the temple, in the Bible, etc., except that the original creators of this ritual of Thanksgiving worshipped who. So he said we can't participate in that because its origins is a worship of another god. So
Reread the history in Canada. They just told us that the pilgrims came over to the
right. They also told us that in elementary school.
Fed them and made them, so they celebrated.
Right. But he said, and I'm not a scholar in this area, but Rabbi Miller, I'll tell you a story. So my mother-in-law we used to be neighbors with a fellow who I'll just say is modern Orthodox. Now, we're not going to go into the breakdown of what's modern Orthodox versus not modern Orthodox, but Jacob knows what I'm talking about. Okay. And this fellow, he wore a knit yarmulke, and he was very Zionistic. And let's say, his wife didn't cover her hair like a more strict Orthodox married woman would. She wore pants and short sleeves, things, a form of dress more liberally than the modesty you'd find in a strict Orthodox home. This fellow was one of the finest fellows I ever met, one of the finest human beings I ever met. I always make sure, and I never look down at any person who's part of a stream of Judaism that isn't the same as mine. And by the way, modern Orthodoxy is still creedally identical to Orthodox. It's just there is just a little bit more liberalism in the interpretation and maybe the performance of the commandments, but creedally we all believe in the same things. We say the same prayers. We're worshiping the same sanctuaries. It's just a little external differences. But I can tell you that as far as refinement, character refinement, we get very hung up on the ritual stuff, but a very huge part of Judaism, Rashi says the majority of the Torah is really about commandments between man and his fellow, proper behavior, morality, etc. This was one of the most refined human beings you ever met. Among the most Orthodox people, it would be very hard to find as fine a human being as this person. Okay, just to give you an example, Jacob may be the only one who understands what I'm about to say. He made a siyum on Mesilas Yesharim 20 times.
Well,
This was his book. Like, he carried the Mesilas Yesharim like under his arm everywhere he went. This is the classic. Understand, this is like the classic of Musar, the classic of Jewish ethical books is Mesilas Yesharim by Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. It's called The Path of the Just in English. And he just reviewed this book over and over, okay? Now, I can tell you more stories about his honesty and integrity. You want to hear a story of his honesty and integrity? I'll tell you a story. I see. Oh, there's Jacob has the book. So, and then I got to go. And I'll tell you the point of what I was saying after all that. But he told me, this guy, he never lies, okay? So he said he was traveling to Israel, and before he went, he wanted to buy a new camera. So he went into a electronics store in Manhattan, and he says, I'd like to buy a camera.
Was it B&H?
It wasn't B&H. And he knew exactly which camera he wanted because his sister had bought this camera and she loved it and she recommended it. He said, I want to buy this specific camera. And the guy said, you sure you want that camera? I have an even better one. And he convinces him to buy a different camera. So you go, okay. And he says to him, okay, do you want me to load it with film for you? And he says, yeah. So the guy goes in the back and he comes back and he says, you want me to put batteries in it for you? He says, yeah. The guy goes in the back. He comes back. He buys the camera, loaded with film and batteries. Fine. He goes to the airport. Now, anyone who's ever traveled to Israel, you know the security people at the airport, they ask you a bunch of interrogatory questions, security questions. Who packed your bags? Is everything yours? Did you see them the whole time since you packed them? Did anyone give you anything? They have all these questions. So most people, they take things from other people. Can you bring this to Israel for me? Sure. They're not watching the bags the whole time, but they don't want to deal with these annoying questions. So they're like, yeah. It's all mine. No one gave me anything. I packed them. I'm watching the bags the whole time. Okay. So the fellow says he doesn't lie. So he gets to El Al and they said, are you carrying any electronics? He says, yeah. Is it new? He said, yeah, it's new. What is it? It's a camera. Have you ever used it before? No, I never used it. So they said, now this is what he said to me. He said, he answered every question wrong. You ready? So they said, oh, really? well, when did you buy it? Oh, I just bought it the other day. He said, why did you buy it? Well, I wanted a new camera. He said, now, this is what they asked him. Listen to this. I said, when you went into the store, did you know what product you wanted? And he says, yeah. He said, did the fellow in the store convince you to buy a different product? He says, yeah. He said, did he load the camera for you? Yeah, he did. Did he load it in front of you or did he load it in the back of the store? As a matter of fact, he loaded it in the back of the store. Did he put batteries in the camera? Yeah, he did. Did he do it in front of you or did he do it in the back? I said, well, he did it in the back of the store. Every security question he failed. Like, this was red flags all over the place. The guy convinced him to buy a different product. He loaded it not in front of him, right? So they checked out the camera. Turns out it was totally safe. However, right, he said to me, imagine if I had lied and it was not safe. And I was like, oh, no. I know, I loaded it. Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't have any new electron. Imagine he didn't answer the question. He said, you have to be honest. He always told me, this guy. Anyway, so he lived in Brooklyn, and he was neighbors with Rebbe Avigdor Miller. And he said, of course, he didn't agree with Rebbe Avigdor Miller and everything. The fact that he was Zionistic and Rebbe Avigdor Miller was very antagonistic towards Zionism. The fact that he had a television in his home, and Rebbe Miller was very antagonistic towards the idea of having a television in one's home. But he loved Rabbi Miller, and he used to go to him regularly and get tapes from him. Rabbi Miller was famous for being one of the first rabbis to record tapes, cassettes of his lectures. And so this fellow, he would get a lot of tapes, and he showed me his tape library. He had like dozens and dozens of Rabbi Miller tapes, and I borrowed many from him, and I listened to them, and I've listened to hours and hours of Rabbi Miller's lectures from this fellow. Now, he told me that he doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving. This fellow, this modern Orthodox fellow, does not celebrate Thanksgiving. And I said, why? And he said, because Rabbi Avigdor Miller told me, well, he does it. And I said, why don't you? And he said, look into it yourself and you'll see. And he said, I looked into it and I concluded it's a Christian holiday. Okay, with that, I have to go. Jacob, have a great night.